Good evening and welcome to another in the series of TalkSports, where we sit down and chat with the movers and shakers of sports in Grenada. This week, our guest is Joel Phillip, a former athlete who represented Grenada in numerous championships, including the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, China, alongside teammate Aline Francisque. Joel is the Associate Athletic Director of Internal Operations at the University of the District of Columbia. It was a quick promotion for the Grenadian, who previously held the post of head coach for the women's track and field programs, where he boasts multiple all-conference student athletes over his 3-year tenure. Joel has a bachelor degree in recreation and exercise management from Arizona State University and a master's degree in sports management from Lindenwood University. I welcome Joel Phillip to this evening's program. Good evening to you, Joel.
Hey, good evening, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Right. Good evening. And folks, we have just a little delayed start, but we have a full program ahead of us. And we welcome you once again to our Talk Sports program. Joel, let's start off as we always start. This is no ordinary time. How have you been coping with the pandemic?
I've been good. It's been a little bit rough. Obviously, with the pandemic, we had to shut down all of our athletic operations. So we're working from home presently. So it's been a little bit hectic, a little bit tough, having to deal with it. But we've been doing what we need to do to make sure that we're able to get things done for our student athletes.
Mm-hmm. Very, very challenging, I would assume, for the entire operations at the university.
Yes, it is. When you're in the office, you have all the tools that you need to make sure that you're able to get everything done. And working from home, not be able to have access to the servers and stuff like that, presents little challenges. But we have to do what we got to do to make sure that everything is done the way it's supposed to be done.
For those who don't really know Joel Phillip, what can you tell us about Phillip? Giving us a little background of yourself, Joel.
Joel Phillip. Let me see. I'm from Laberia, St. Paul's, which is in St. George. Let me see. Where should I start? I started GBSS. Started GBSS in 09. Basically, first sport there was track and field. I did branch off into doing soccer as well there, as we say, football. I also did volleyball. What other sports did I do? Cricket for GBSS as well. To me, sports I love sports. So whatever sports I had opportunity to compete in and be a part of, I tried.
But even in track and field, you multidiscipline.
Yes, well, in track, I did every event from the 100 to the 400, hurdles at times as well, and every field event minus pool. Well, I even did pole vault in college, but I did every field event minus maybe the hammer throw and weight throw. Mm-hmm. So multi-event.
Probably in Grenada, the only sport you didn't probably compete competitively might have been swimming.
Probably swimming and basketball. I didn't do those competitively.
Oh, okay, right. But I'm assuming that you will relive some of your competitiveness representing Grenada at probably Windward Island Secondary School games, Carifta games, all these things, obviously.
Yes. I always tell my athletes that, or should I say my former athletes, that for me, during my secondary school days, competing at Intercall, Carifta, secondary school games, those were some of the most fun times for me in terms of track and field and the other sports that I did during those times, because, back then you were able to, relax and have a bit more fun, with what you're doing in the sport and with your teammates. So those days were really fun for me. And to be honest, I miss, competing at that level.
Yeah, but what really, and we spoke about that, talking about played volleyball, track and field, all these things. If I may ask you, what may have motivated you to compete in all these sporting events?
Uh, uh, to be honest, my siblings. My siblings are very competitive. Um, Anything that we put our mind to, and as a younger sibling, you see your older sibling doing something, and you're like, well, if he doing it or she doing that, I want to do it too. And it builds that competition, amongst us that kind of branched off into competing against others, whether it's in school or other countries or whatever it is. It kind of built that competitive spirit within me. So because of them, it kind of branched me off into different sports, and that competitive spirit that I have in terms of competing against anyone in any sport once I'm healthy and I know I have the idea of what I should be doing in that sport. It didn't stop me from attempting to compete in it.
Okay, we have quite a lot to cover tonight, and I know there are people who are eager to get some of the information. But let's look at when you left Grenada, and even before that, folks must know that, and as I indicated in the introduction, you are an Olympian. You represented Grenada at the Olympic Games in 2008. Let's just relive, Joel competing in the Olympics in 2008. What was it like for you, Joel?
I mean, that was a special occasion for me. One of my former coaches, Richard Tyndale, I remember from ever since I was in, I want to say primary school, he always said, Joel, you have the talent, and, I see you one day competing at the Olympic Games. And so said, so done. And it was a special moment for me. I've never been in any competition where the crowd and the atmosphere is so welcoming and so inviting. These people, they don't know you, but they don't really care what country you're from. They support you. They're cheering. They're applauding, whatever it is. The atmosphere is so inviting and so welcoming. And just being there, seeing all the other big names in sports around the world, just it was a special occasion for me. And if every athlete could have the opportunity to experience that, I would wish that they could.
Okay, and then you ultimately, went on to college. Just let's talk about the Central Arizona, then compete in NCAA, all these sort of things up to the point of where you are now.
So the first college I went to was Central Arizona College out in Coolidge, Arizona. That was
and that's a junior college you're speaking of.
Yes, that is a junior college
where so many Grenadians would have attended.
Yes, it's a 2-year college. The likes of Hazel and Regis went there. Sadisha Marisho, myself, Andon Mitchell, Shane Charles. A lot of us went through that system, and going there, it was a new experience for me. It was my first time actually being in the USA. So it was different. It was a learning experience for me. Different culture, the different system in terms of education, having to, learn how to go through that. It was different. It was challenging at times, but, the way I was brought up and, the kind of spirit that we have in Grenada, it doesn't matter what kind of environment that we're put in, we're able to adapt and do what we need to do to be successful.
Okay. And then obviously, the rest is history, because from Central Arizona, you went on to Arizona State.
Yes,
where you competed at the NCAA level, Division I, right?
Division I.
Division I, highest level of competition, and from there, the rest is history.
Yes.
Here is Joel now.
Yes, I mean, and even at Arizona State, it presented its own challenges compared to being at Central Arizona College. In Arizona, it was considered as one of the top partying schools, in the entire country of the United States of America. So, being there, you had different distractions and different things that could, kind of throw you off the reason why you're there. in the first place, and having to work through those new challenges and and do what I need to do. Here I am now, and I'm my present role at UDC.
Yeah. But Joel, I mean, for those who are listening, and we'll get to that at some point in time, it was no easy feat for you in terms of the progression from an athlete to a coach to now an administrator.
Yeah, no. To be honest with you, it wasn't that hard for me. Um, when I left Grenada, going to Central Arizona College, my goal was to get into to mechanical engineering. That's something that I want to do. But at Central, that's something that they didn't have. They had it at Arizona State, but me starting that program after the 2 years that I did at Central, it would have pushed back my graduation time, an extra 2 years. So, it's always good to have a plan A, a plan B. And my plan B was to do something within sports. And when I realized that the mechanical engineering would not have worked out, you know, being at ASU kind of exposed me to, the different parts of collegiate athletics. And, from there, once I realized, the different parts of it, you know, that's where I made my mind up, and I was like, you know what, I think, getting into that part of sports and one day becoming an athletic director of an entire university, that's what I set my eyes on. So the bachelor's degree that I did at Arizona State, that's where I started doing that with the recreation management and exercise and wellness. That was the start. And then getting to Lindenwood University and doing the master's in sports management, just kind of everything just kind of flowed, from there.
Okay, and let's set the stage, Joel, so that the folks who are following will be able to understand exactly what is your role now at the University of District of Columbia as Associate Athletics Director of Internal Operations.
So the current role that I have is basically I'm in charge of all our game day operations, all our facilities, transportation for our teams, equipment and apparel for our teams. I'll also oversee our sports medicine department, and some other little things that we do within our department.
Quite a bit for you to be doing. I mean, a young man as Joel Phillip, that's
Yeah.
quite a lot.
Yes. Yes, and actually, I forgot one. We're planning to start an esports program, which I would also be overseeing as well. Hopefully next year.
Yeah. So, Joel, for those who are listening, especially the young sportsmen and sportswomen, the parents, the coaches, those in charge, what it is you think they need to know after outlining all that you went through, your game plan, everything like that. So, experiencing it yourself. And in retrospect, if you have to do it again, how would you best do that from start to probably finish?
To be honest, I wouldn't change anything that I did in terms of the way things went well for me. Um, I always say that there's always a plan. God always has a plan for your life and the way He wants things to work out for you. So where I'm concerned, I wouldn't change anything for me. But for other parents, athletes and coaches, I would say that the first thing is you have to realize one, as a student athlete, and I say student athlete because you're a student first, athlete second. You have to realize that you're not, a normal student. Put it that way, And like I tell my former student athletes that you're special because the things that you have to go through and things you have to do is a lot different than what a regular student would have to go through and things that they would have to do. So you would have to set a plan for yourself. Decide what what kind of major, what line of work would you want to get into. That's the first thing, because believe it or not, academics is number one as a student athlete. You don't have those grades, best believe you won't be on the team, especially where scholarships are concerned. If you have a scholarship, it will be gone just like that if your academics is not where it needs to be. So I would say the first thing is developing a plan, of where you want to go, and what you want to do career-wise before you start doing anything else.
And and there's also the myth that you know that especially when it comes to scholarships, that once they mention the word scholarship, it means that you do not have to pay a cent. And for many, you have to understand there are other costs involved, and obviously it's something that will be directed at parents in particular, because many times they do not know. They depend on the information probably from just a local coach or from the child himself, and not understanding the intricacies and things. So by you speaking to them, you will be probably urging them also to have a keen interest in knowing all that is involved. How do you advise them in terms of getting the necessary information, especially one, as you say, developing a plan, academics first, sports second, but also knowing what all the steps involved?
Right. So when you hear scholarship, it doesn't mean that it's a full ride, as we say up here. It's not a full scholarship. You have different levels of scholarship. You might get a 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% scholarship. It all depends on what the coaches decide. Sometimes it's not all up to the coach that you're speaking to. Let's say, for example, you're a thrower, and you're speaking to the throwers coach about attending a certain university. That throwers coach may not be the head coach of the program. So basically, by them speaking to you, they also have to speak to the head coach to decide what dollar amount of scholarship that they're going to, willing to offer you, right?
And just stick a pin there, because you're speaking about, in many cases rather, it's being competitive because it means that you have to compete against someone from Jamaica, Barbados, even within the United States as well.
Yes. So to be honest with you, and I say it frank, college sports, it's kind of like a business, it is a competition in terms of, where could I get the best athletes for the least amount of money, right? So if, for example, I have an athlete from Grenada who was, let's say, for example, a male athlete running 21 seconds in 200, and I could get another athlete in Florida who's running that same 21 seconds, I may go for that in Florida because I know, even though the one from Grenada may be able to be faster at the end of the day, I may take the one in Florida because I will spend less and I might be able to bring in another athlete who will complement that athlete from Florida because I'm spending less on him, right? So there's different ways different coaches think about how they're going to give us scholarships. Best way that how is going to kind of fit their program, right? So coaches basically think about their program and bringing in athletes and how it's going to best, get them to whatever goals that they have set for their program. So you have to think of it in that, yes, you're this good, but you're not just competing against, let's say, someone from SAS or someone from another college, someone from GBS or PBC. You're competing for other athletes from different parts of the world for that scholarship money.
Well, yeah, and that sums it up all in terms of how competitive. When we say competitive, in terms of, as you said,
yes,
it comes down to a business decision at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes, at the end of the day, I mean, all these teams, whether it be track, soccer, basketball, no matter what program it is, they all have budgets, and they have to stick within those budgets. So, that scholarship dollar is at a premium, and you have to, be that much better in order to be able to earn that scholarship money.
So how can they make themselves marketable? That would be the next question. And by the way, for student athletes and parents and coaches, if you have any questions, feel free to pose your questions to Joel. But the question I'm asking you now, how can they make themselves marketable?
So I listened and I watched the interview that you did with Kevin Cox about 2 weeks back, and one thing he mentioned was videos. And I was in Grenada, I think it was either last year or year before, and I spoke to some of the student athletes at GBSS, and some of the other athletes were from Anglican High School, and I believe either Wesley College or so, from the SRC club. And one thing I told them is that you need to have some videos. Um, Today, everybody has a smartphone with a camera. It doesn't the quality of the camera doesn't have to be the best, but once you have something you're able to record some kind of video, that helps a lot. It doesn't always have to be at a competition. It can be practice. A lot of the times coaches want to see, what you look like when you're doing what you're doing. It could be, your mechanics, um, stuff like that. Just want to see something or see what you're capable of. Kind of an idea, a pitch of what they're trying to get. So having some video helps a lot in marketing yourself, and you don't necessarily have to post it on any special website. You can upload it to YouTube. YouTube is free. So one thing I would say in terms of marketing yourself is having some videos. Another way, and I just saw the comment from Kurt. That's another way. Being able to do multiple events. That's a big thing over here in the U.S. because in terms of winning conference championships and NCAA championships, coaches need athletes who are able to score as much points as possible. And when you're able to do multiple events, that that makes you so much more valuable to that coach and that team. So those are two big ways I see you can market yourself in terms of getting a scholarship in track and field.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad Kurt made that point because, like Kurt, like yourself, and even Lyndon and others, the multi events help you all tremendously. And as Kurt says, specifically in terms of track and field, help you tremendously in terms of advancing, in terms of your destination and things like that. And that is what you would like to advise, especially track and field athletes.
Yes. And when I say multi events, I'm not talking about just doing the heptathlon or the decathlon.
No.
I'm talking in terms of doing different events. So if you're a sprinter, try long jumping or triple jumping as well.
Right. Yeah.
Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so in terms of the athletes and folks, we will distinguish at times in terms of track and field, but when we say athletes, we try to generalize in terms of sportsmen and women, because at times you hear them say basketball, volleyball, but when we say athletes, we want to speak specifically about those who compete in different sporting events, because as Joel is explaining there, most of the conditions are similar in terms of basketball and volleyball, especially at the NCAA level. But the challenge, Joel, now, and we're looking at post-pandemic, how much is it a challenge for those who are seeking these opportunities?
Right now it is more challenging because, like I said, a lot of staffs are not on campus. Everything is being done from home. So a lot of the things that they would have access to being in the office, they don't have it, at home. So it's a bit challenging. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that you still, are not able to reach out to coaches, send them videos or whatever, or other material seeking scholarships. The pandemic has not stopped any recruiting from happening. The only thing that we're not able to do right now is compete. Today the NCAA's Board of Governors sent out a memo for Division II that the championship season will not is canceled for the most part for fall sports. But it's up to the schools and the conferences to still, if they still want to, have conference tournaments or conference competition, they're still able to do so. So with that being said, on the national level, at least for the fall sports right now, we will see no competition, but within the conferences, there still is going to be some type of competition. So coaches are still looking for athletes to fill their rosters. So, I would say, if you're looking for somewhere to attend university, I would still, reach out to coaches and, market yourself, let them know what you're looking for and what you can offer the program.
Okay, we have some questions coming in. One question is, what is the minimum GPA score one must maintain to ensure continuation of that scholarship?
Some programs is different. For the NCAA, I believe it's a 2.0 or a 2.2 scholarship. Sorry, GPA to maintain your eligibility within that sport. Like I said, some programs are different. They would say, okay, if you're below a 2.5, we no longer want you on the team because you're a risk. You're a risk. Especially if you're on scholarship, they might see you as a risk to that money that they're giving you. So they might be like, you know what, we no longer want you. We want to find someone else who is a more balanced student athlete. So again, the NCAA rules for being eligible, I believe it's either a 2.0 or 2.2. But again, like I said, certain teams, have their own rules where that is concerned.
Okay, here is Kyron Batiste, an athlete seeking a scholarship with strong academics. Is a very marketable athlete. Also, you agree?
And I would agree with that to a point. And the reason I say to a point is because you have some coaches and some teams who, depending on how good you are athletically, they would see you with let's say a 2.0 or a 2.2, and they would take that chance on you in terms of giving you that scholarship. They would take that chance on you with the hope that you're able to, work on bumping that GPA up, right? So with that being said, yes, it's good. It's very marketable to have a good GPA, and I would encourage everyone to push your academics on having a good GPA. But being honest, and I'll be honest, not every coach looks at that as the most important thing when they're recruiting.
Okay, and then we have Curtis actually saying that post-pandemic, that sports getting cut from some schools will be another challenge.
Yes, I mean, if you look at the news, you have a lot of universities who have, for the most part, cut the sport of track and field. And the reason why they have done so is because, like I said, college athletics is a business for the most part, and track and field is not a sport that brings in money to a university. Basketball, American football, they bring in the money. So if a department, is finding it hard to, have the financial, to be financially sound to host all the programs that they have. To be honest, track and field is usually one of the first programs that they look on cutting because that's a sport that they could save some money.
Okay, then. And then we also have Kyron is coming back to say that coaches like to know they can report to the athletic directors. They have players on their teams that are on the honor rolls or maintain a strong GPA while in college.
And I mean that's a good point. But like I said earlier, and I'm gonna be honest, some programs don't look at it that way. If you're able to score points that will bring a team or a program to winning a conference championship, they're going to push you in that, regardless of what your GPA is. If they can see that you can score some points to help them win a national championship, sometimes they're going to push you, in the athletic part and not the academic part, because you could win in that championship, because that's going to help bring in money to that program, right? So, like I said, while I would encourage every student athlete to be in your books, you want to be, at least for me, you want to be at least a 3.0 or above. I would encourage every student athlete to strive for that. But in reality, not every program looks for that. Especially on the Division One side, they're more about that money business than the academic business. Once you could put those points for them to help them get those championships, and which will bring in the money, that's what they look for. So while I agree with your comment, other times in reality, it's just not like that.
Okay, then. A very interesting question there, and it's coming from Ali McIntyre. Is there a minimum CXC passes required for entry into a U.S. college?
That's a compliance question, and I'm not in compliance. But what I could say is that from experience, most times when they look at your CXC, it's just to make sure that you did that exam to kind of help prove that you graduated. I don't know if anyone on here knows about the eligibility center, the NCAA eligibility center, but that's part of the process that NCAA uses to make sure that student athletes who are coming into college, that they are eligible for competition. That's like the one of the first phases of becoming a college student athlete. You have to sign up for the eligibility center, and during that process, you have to submit your test scores, whether it's SAT or ACT. You have to send in your graduation diploma, because you have to show proof of graduation. And, the CXC, that's just one of the things that they want to see, just to prove that, you did do those exams, you did graduate from high school, so that you could enter college and, essentially be a collegiate student athlete.
Okay, so it's almost like a clearinghouse to
Yes,
justify that you have you attended secondary school, you have graduated, you have done exams, etc., etc.
right. Well, before it was called the NCAA Clearinghouse, but they changed the name to the Eligibility Center.
Yeah, and so let's look now at for because we realize that some people are joining us a bit late, so we may have to recant some of the steps. As you indicated earlier, it's not too late, even at this stage, for student athletes. And when we say student athletes, it's not just track and field, whether you're basketball, volleyball, I mean, just name the sport, right? If you have an interest, it's not too late for you to inquire. It's not too late for parents also to be part of the process. It's not too late for even the coaches to be part of the process. And as you indicated, it's also important for them to start networking, meaning touching base with others, coaches and others alike in colleges in the US. Let's rehash that for some of the
Yes,
people who have been joining us late.
yeah. So because of the pandemic, I know a lot of well, not a lot, all sports are affected by it, especially on the collegiate level. Um, you know, Currently we're not having any fall sports like soccer, because the pandemic basically has shut all that down. For our conference, we have pushed soccer to the spring. So with that being said, notwithstanding the pandemic, we still have programs who are looking for student athletes. So just because we're already in August, that doesn't mean that all of the programs have their roster spots filled. So with that being said, I would still urge student athletes to put your name out there, reach out to coaches. Maybe they might have a spot that has your name on it. So don't let what's happening now with the pandemic deter you from putting your name in that hat and reaching out to coaches and letting them know that you are interested and you are available to be a part of whatever team that they have.
Okay, we have a question coming in from Coach Dennis Williams. Good evening to you, Coach Williams. And her question is: some of the U.S. Colleges are asking for students' GPA from high school in Grenada. How can our athletes get around that problem in Grenada?
So that's, to be honest, that's a weird question, because at least for me, I know the system is different from the American system, the American education system, and the Canadian education system. The way we go about grading and everything is different. And I believe most coaches should know that. And if they don't, they are able to go to their compliance director or whoever's in charge of compliance for their sport, and that person could, walk them through the different steps um, in getting the GPA. So when I recruit from Jamaica, um, before coming in, they would send us their. I would ask for a transcript. Most times when I ask for it, it's not an official transcript, because most times they haven't graduated as yet. So I would ask for an official transcript, and I would give it to my compliance director, and he would either send it over to the admissions department so they could kind of get a read on the transcript, kind of transfer it from our system to the American system, or they would ask, that student athlete, could you send it to a certain their organizations that do those conversions for a price.
Yeah,
And that's what I did. So when coaches would ask a student athlete, or they would ask a coach in Grenada, what is a conversion, to me, I think that's an unfair question to ask, because the coaches wouldn't know that. Coaches in Grenada wouldn't know, well, 89% in this subject would be a in the American system, or it would be this GPA number in the American system. Wouldn't know that. So what they need to ask is that, could you send me a copy of a transcript, so that way either they can get it converted themselves, or ask you, could you send it to this organization so they could convert it, so that way we can know what the GPA is.
yeah. I think you're speaking about they use the word translation, but it's not. Yeah,
Yes.
they use the word translation. But
Yes.
is an important point made by Coach Williams, and it's important that people like Coach Williams and them understand and probably stand firm in terms of letting them know, well, here, our system is such, and
Right.
what I understand is this is what you probably need. You probably need a transcript, something to that effect. We in our system do not, have the system of GPA and these sort of things,
Right.
especially at the high school level, right?
Right. And I think, to be honest, I think most coaches know that. I think they just, they may tend to, word what they're asking for, you know, incorrectly, or, they expect you to know what you have to do to get them what they want. And maybe they just word it, in a way that, you know, we kind of see it as, well, how are we going to convert this? But I think what they really need to be asking is, could you get the conversion, or could you send us a transcript so we could get the conversion, so we can know what we have to work with.
Okay, and I think well, Kevin is saying that CXC is not part of the U.S. grading system, so they don't accept them. But the NCAA clearinghouse do look at them to gauge where athletes are academically, well, as indicated,
Yeah.
earlier. And
Yeah.
Edwin Sam is making the point: parents must be part of the process. Joel, how much can you urge parents to be part of the process?
I think every parent needs to be a part of this process. As we just speaking about scholarships, let's say you get a first scholarship. A first scholarship includes, your tuition, your room, possibly your board. Sometimes it includes books, sometimes it doesn't. So um, I think parents need to be involved so they can know potentially what funds they might possibly have to come out of pocket to pay for. And just to kind of touch on room, yes, sometimes room may be included in that scholarship, but room does not include, sheets, pillows, the toiletries, stuff like that. It doesn't include that. So, those are places where parents would have to come out of pocket, and spend money to get those things. So parents definitely need to be, involved in the process. And even with speaking with the coaches, sometimes coaches would, speak to the athlete and they would say something to the athlete might not grasp what the coach is saying, but a parent, might better grasp what the coach is trying to say, and figure out what they need to do versus hearing the second hand from a student athlete and being kind of confused or spending money somewhere that they shouldn't spend money. So I agree that parents definitely need to be a part of the process, in terms of getting student athletes out to the US for school.
And how concerned, if any, should parents, coaches, student athletes be now with the COVID times, and we're speaking about COVID times, in terms of, searching for available opportunities? Some may be a bit apprehensive about, seeking those opportunities because of the uncertainties regarding the one, the scholarships, and two, what we have been hearing of recently in terms of the some colleges doing online as well, in some cases rather than the the in-person tutoring. How concerned should they be?
I personally, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I could speak for our university. International students that we have, because of COVID and because with the U.S. borders and stuff like that, they are not allowed to come back at this point in time. So they are not allowed, or they won't be allowed to start classes until spring. You know, um, obviously you're not allowed to start classes if you don't have that F1 visa, that's your student visa. And once you don't have it, the that part of the university, would not allow you to register for classes and stuff like that. So for us, we're waiting until spring once things kind of clear up a bit. That way, those students can come back and they can start their classes. So even though the COVID has interrupted things or a normal way of doing things, um, we're still finding ways to accommodate students and student athletes. And that, okay, yes, you can do it now, but we're going to push things back so that you're able to still come in and whether it's academic or the sports, still be able to participate in those things.
Okay, then. Interesting one though. Choose carefully. Fencing and wrestling applications from Caribbean athletes don't even get a glimpse. What you will consider probably non-traditional sports for the Caribbean, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, those are non-traditional sports. I don't think a lot of coaches up here would, you know, take the time to look to the Caribbean for those type of athletes when those athletes are a dime a dozen up here. Most times in their own state where they don't have to spend extra money for all the state costs and stuff like that. So, um, it's kind of going back to marketing yourself. You know, um, most coaches won't fly to Grenada for intercall to see what's going on. They will more fly to like Carifta because they're able to see all the athletes that the region has to offer versus just seeing what Grenada has. So like I said, it comes to marketing. If you're a wrestler or you're a fencer and you want to get an opportunity at a university up here, the same thing. Just market yourself. If you're that good and the coach can see that you're that good, they definitely would reach out to see if they can make something happen.
And again, with this virtual platforms all over the place now, it's even more important that um, and you indicated earlier that student athletes start, recording, whether it's their training sessions, whether in competition, whatever it is they're doing. The student athletes, their coaches, their parents should have an interest in doing that, because we don't know what will lie ahead or what lies ahead, especially in terms of international travel, in terms of how things may be, in the future. So in the short term, they have to start thinking differently.
Right. And I want to make this point. In the NCAA, you have three divisions: Division One, Division Two, Division Three. With Division One being, the top division, and everyone wants to be at a Division One school because that's where the most money is. You might get more gear and all that kind of stuff. But when I recruit, this is what I tell student athletes: do you want to go to a university where you're just a number, or do you want to go to a university where you're one of the top persons on that team? Do you want to go to a university where you have 30 other athletes, vying for attention, or do you want to go to a university where you have 10 other athletes? You know, um, to be honest with you, the education is the same. Sometimes you have athletes who are the Division 3 level who are running faster than athletes at the Division 1 level. You could ask anyone, who was at a junior college at Central. When I was at Central, Kurt was at Central, we would attend the same Division 1 meets, and we would be beating a lot of the Division 1 athletes. So whenever you're looking for schools, I would always suggest, don't just think of it as, well, I want to go D1. You want to look for a school that's going to best fit you, as a student athlete. Make sure that they have the major that you want to do. Make sure that they have, the facilities and the coaching staff that would fit best for you. Because to be honest, not all Division 1 schools, are good at what they do or are good at what they're supposed to do. And not all Division 1 schools, give you the kind of attention academically and athletically that you need to be successful.
Okay, we have a question. It appears that Kathy is in Toronto. For independent basketball athletes in Canada who are seeking scholarships in the US, what is the process, not including the videos?
So in Canada, you're still considered as an international student. So the same process that we go through, we would have to go through in Grenada, getting, or any other country in the world getting into the US to university, the process is still the same. You still have to register with the NCAA Eligibility Center. If the education there is different, you still have to send those transcripts and get them evaluated. The process is still the same. There's no change in that process.
Okay, and Joel, let's look at the situation where we had some of our athletes who outlined that they had lost a year of eligibility because they attended, not really attended, but they repeated a sixth, well, we call it a sixth form, but they had a repeat in Form 5, which is, the conversion would be a sixth form. Right. And because of that, they would have lost eligibility. So it means that a lot of athletes would have experienced a similar fate in terms of whether they attended TAMCC, for example, whether they had a second, and in some cases had a second year before they attended TAMCC. How do the athletes, the student athletes, understand the process and do not, especially those who have, intentions of studying in colleges in the US, do not fall victim to this system?
Okay, so what I would suggest, and I think every coach in Grenada, whether it doesn't matter what sport you're coaching, I think you should go to, I believe it's ncaapublications.org, I think it is, and you should download the NCAA manual. Usually they update the manuals every year, and I would suggest that you download those manuals. They have manuals for Division 1, 2, and 3. And those manuals are the same manuals that we go by to make sure that we don't break any of those NCAA rules in terms of recruiting, game management, whatever it is, all the rules are listed within those manuals. So I think to start, I think every coach needs to go through those manuals so that we have kind of have an idea of how things, are kind of run within the NCAA system.
Mhm.
Secondly, to go to your question, so this is how things kind of work with the NCAA. When you graduate from secondary school or high school, um, you're usually given a 1 year grace period before you go into college, and you're not penalized for a season, right? If you take a second year, right? Because I took a second year. If you take a second year, this is where the CXC comes in, right? Because, and I'm gonna use myself as an example. I graduated from GBSS in 2004, right? I took a second year and I did CXC again in 2005. When I sent my information up to the NCAA Eligibility Center, they saw that my graduation date was 2004. But because they got my CXC results from 2005 with a GBSS stamp on it, and a signature saying that, yes, I was here in 2005 and I did do these subjects, what the NCAA does is that they push the graduation date back to 2005, right? So that way I didn't lose a season because they said, okay, well, yes, he graduated in 04, but because he came back for another year and he did do subjects, he did do these exams, we're going to push his date back so that he doesn't forfeit a year, right? In the case of, you graduate from secondary school and you go to TAM-CC, because TAM-CC is considered like a community college, once you enroll there and you do an entire year, you forfeit that 1 year, right? So you have to kind of be careful when you're doing a second year. If you're going to do a second year, you can't do a second year just because you want to do it to continue doing sports to maybe improve so that you have a better time, so that more coaches will kind of look at you or try to get you. You want to do that second year and at least do some subjects, so that way when you send your information to the NCAA, they can see that well, they graduated the year before, but because they came and they did do some work, we're going to push your graduation timeline back, and they're able to get their full years of competition versus losing one.
That's where academics come ahead of sports, right?
Yes, yes. Because you remember the whole thing with the NCAA system is that you have to be an amateur, right? And if you're not an amateur, then they see you as someone who's professional. If you're professional, that means you're making money. Then to them, you have no right being, in the NCAA system. So, being an amateur means that you are in school, you are doing these exams, and that's how you're able to keep that year.
Okay, so that's the high school in particular. But as you said, if you
Yes.
attend the TAM-CC, which is a community college, you would have lost 1 year. Once you have completed 1 year, you would have lost a year of
Yep.
eligibility.
Yes. Yes, you want to lose that first year of eligibility.
Okay. While we're on TAM-CC, as one who is now in that role, as a major role as an athletic director of a university, what's your candid view of TAM-CC and in relation to sports in general?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I didn't go to TAMTC, so I'm not sure on what sports or what role sports play being at TAMTC. I know they usually have like the sports day and stuff like that,
Well,
but
let's
to
say for
me,
now, let's say for now, no sports. Let's say for
okay,
now on because I mean we have to be honest. Yes, they may have the intramural department, sports, whatever, but TAM-CC as our leading tertiary outside of St. George's University, our leading tertiary institution, and the more or less a gathering of all our sportsmen and women around the island, whether it's from SAS, GBSS, PVC, just name it, even from Bishop's College, Carriacou, they come after you have competed all these years as top, athletes. If you don't get a scholarship, especially to go out of Grenada, you most likely go to TAMCC. And for many, it's where probably all dreams are shattered.
You know, I think the problem with, and I won't say the problem with TAMCC, I think the problem that we have is within our sports education and our Olympic Association, who should know, these rules. They should know. They should make it their. They should make it a point to know these rules, right? To be honest with you, Grenada, we have a lot of talented athletes, and we should not be second class to Trinidad, Bahamas, Jamaica. We shouldn't be second class to them, because we have the same, if not more talent than they do in the different sporting disciplines within track and field, soccer, basketball, um, swimming, name the sport. We have athletes who are just as talented, if not more talented. And I think if we have people within the ministry, people within the Olympic Association who are educated in the rules, whether it's the NCAA rules, whether it's the NJCAA rules, and that's the National Junior College Association, or even the NIAA rules, or sorry, the NAIA rules, you will see that whenever we have student athletes who are ready to graduate from secondary school and they have that talent, instead of just saying, well, you know what, well, I ain't get this year, so I want to go to TAMCC, or I ain't get this year, I want to go do a second year in whatever secondary school that they're at, you will be able to see that they're able to get help in marketing themselves and get them over here to the US, where they're able to further their education and further their whatever athletic discipline that they're in, right? So I don't think the problem lies with TAMCC. I think the problem lies with having people within the ministry or people within the Olympic Association who should know these rules and be able to help these student athletes get whatever information to be able to move forward to colleges and universities over here in the US.
Yeah, but yeah, I understand that point. The point I'm making now is that TAMCC as an institution, in terms of harnessing the talents, because it's all well and good for the ministry and the Olympic Committee and others to get involved in terms of that, but because there isn't a sports structure within the TAMCC, it means that once you enter TAMCC, if Cyril Cox or Dwayne Gill not being part of the process, and they have their other things to deal with, right? Because there isn't a sports structure within the college, it means that when you get to the college, if for some reason you don't have an interest in sports again, everything falls on the wayside. And we have seen many sportsmen and women, talented sportsmen and women, who have left secondary schools, enter the TAMCC, and they have just given up sports altogether because there isn't a system within the college to harness their talents.
Okay, I understand your question, but this is how I look at it where TAMCC is concerned, right? TAMCC is more or less the only place of education at that level within Grenada, right? They really can't compete at Interpol because those students have already moved on from secondary school, which Interpol is mainly for. Interpol is for secondary school student athletes to compete, not community college, right? So I don't see the reason why TAMCC needs to develop a sporting program or a program for sports, because that's not really where that's not their purpose. I'll put it that way. Their purpose is for students who leave secondary school to further their education, right? So personally, I don't think they need to develop a program for sports at TAMCC. With that being said, I do understand, people like Mr. Cox, who, would take their own time to help coach some of the athletes who are there, because to be honest, when I was at GBSS, Mr. Cox, did help me a bit with some of the things that I used to do in terms of track, But like I said, I don't see it as an issue where TAMCC needs to develop a program for sports. I think that should fall on the ministry. They need to put people in place. Like I said, if they want to see, Grenada progress in sports, they need to put people in place to help student athletes get to where they need to be successful in sports and be successful academically. That's the only. I can't see how TAMCC, having a program is going to help. Because remember, once you leave a secondary school, you go to TAMCC. It doesn't matter whether it's your first year or second year. You're going to lose time, or you're going to lose eligibility, even if you want to transfer to the US. So if you spend a year at TAMCC, you have 3 years when you get to the US. You spend 2 years at TAMCC, you have 2 years when you come to the US. So in that case, might as well you look for a junior college here in the US versus going to TAMCC.
Okay, very debatable. We have and we have different opinions. But just to let you know, we will go until the top now because we have a lot to still talk about. I hope you have the time. We have some questions and some comments that I want you to deal with. Let's first go off to Edwin Sam again. While this is not directly related to the recruitment process, I'm curious about your thoughts on this. Should colleges cancel their fall sports if classes are being done online only? Also, should college athletes be paid? What's your take on that?
Okay, so in terms of the first question, in terms of fall sports being canceled, like I said earlier, the NCAA has canceled all fall sports. Well, basically the fall sports championship season, the NCAA has canceled that. What that means is that there would be no national or no regional championship opportunities within those fall sports, right? The only fall sports that's going to be played is if the conferences decide to participate or want to have an interconference tournament, between the teams in the conference. So, like for our university and the universities within our conference, because we're sticking to virtual learning, all of our fall sports have been either canceled or pushed towards the spring season. So soccer, for example, which is one of our fall sports, we push that to the spring season because majority of those student athletes are internationals. 1 and 2, they can't get into the country. So it makes no sense, having the sports and you don't have those athletes here to compete in them. Also, because they're international, like I said earlier, they won't be allowed in because they won't have an I-20, they won't have their visa to get in. And that's something that you need to even be able to take your classes. So international students, even though, especially for new international students who don't have a visa, they won't be able to take classes this fall because they don't have the means. The schools can't supply them with the means to be able to register for classes. So where fall sports is concerned, it's just not happening this year. To answer the second question, should college athletes get paid? To be honest, in my opinion, it's a yes and a no. I'm kind of varying with it because you have on one hand where, some student athletes are getting their tuition paid, they're getting their room and board paid, and they still collect a check every month, whether it's to pay rent, get food, or whatever it is, they still get a check, from the school, depending on how your scholarship is set up. On the other hand, you have student athletes who are bringing in a lot of money to the NCAA and the colleges that they attend. So for me, I don't know. I'm on the fence with it. On one hand, I would say yes, and on another hand, I would say no. Because, you are signing a contract when you sign a scholarship saying that, you give up the right to your name and likeness to the school and NCAA for their use once you're within that university system. And on the other hand, they're making money off your name and likeness. So, I'm on the fence with it. And, I don't know. I would say yes and no. It all depends.
All right. Okay. We have another one to go to, but just to remind that on Saturday, we'll be talking OECS sports with former OECS sports coordinator Joseph Retzperer and Ray Roberts. They'll be discussing sports in the OECS, sports and the sports media in the OECS. It should be a very interesting discussion. Saturday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Join us for a discussion on OECS sports. Former sports coordinator Joseph Retzperer in St. Lucia and Ray Roberts in Grenada. Here, what we have now, you would think by now GAA, which I assume they're referring to the Grenada Athletic Association, and government would have seriously think of implementing or fostering an adoption athlete program to assist student athletes, considering how many former and retired athletes residing in the diaspora. Joel?
I mean, you would think, but in the reality, I mean, it's not there as yet. I agree. There are so many of us who are over here.
But have you ever been approached by the authorities in Grenada to assist in any way possible?
And to be honest with you, where sports in Grenada is concerned, I don't get approached. I don't hear about anything that's happening. The only how I would know, well, certain things are going on is because I would see about it on Facebook, or a friend may have in Grenada and be like, hey, what this going on. But no one has approached me. No one has said, well, Joel, we know you're over here. We know you're coaching. We know you're doing this. You're doing that. What help? Could you lend? How, in what way could you assist? Even if it's just coming and speaking or anything. No one has approached me in that way. And I come to Grenada on holiday almost every year. And I make it a habit to go to GBSS, and I would speak to the athletes there because that's where I went to school. So I make it my habit to go there and speak to the athletes that are there. So it's not like they don't have information to contact me or anything like that. It's there. You Google my name, you're gonna find it. So there shouldn't be a issue in finding. Now let me say this, right? There's an issue in Grenada where a lot of not just coaches but people, whether it's an ministry or whatever it is, they have what I would consider to be an ego problem, right? They look out for themselves. Where I'm concerned, for me, it should be about the athletes, right? I don't care what post you hold or what you have or haven't done. I think the main focus should be about the athletes. And I have come to Grenada before, and I've tried to help certain athletes, and I was met with the attitude of, well, we don't need your help. So there are times where I come and I would see certain things happening, and I just turn, I go the other direction because I'm being met with, we don't need your help. And I think that's one of the reasons why sports on a whole in Grenada, we're not on the same level as Jamaica and Trinidad and all those other Caribbean islands, even though we have the same talent. Because the best interests of the athletes are not being put on the forefront. It's more so of the ego of the coaches and other people. That's put up front, and the athletes are the ones who are suffering for it. So to answer your question, no one has approached me to help or in any way.
Well, I'm glad I heard it from you. I mean, I have had my own experience in terms of, coming up with ideas and then having to, turn around, I should say, because again, the whole issue of the attitude one, the issue of accountability and other things that I will talk about in due course. But getting back to the issue there, probably an assigned individual in the Ministry of Sports to work with all potential scholarship athletes. Well, that's Kyron's suggestion, but as you're saying that, it's not something hard to do, but you wonder why it's not, it's done.
I'll say this as well. We have these conversations. I have these conversations with other former athletes, who have competed for Grenada on the Olympic level, and we have these conversations on a regular basis. But we have it, and no one reaches out. No one says, well, you competed for us. You're here now. What way could you help? Me personally, I'm always down. I'm always open to helping. That's just me. And if you ask anybody who has worked with me, be it coach or athlete or whatever it is, they will tell you that I'm the kind of person you ask me for help. Once I'm able to, I help. That's why when I come to Grenada, I speak to the athletes at GBSS, because I want to give them the idea and give them the tools that, if they try to get a scholarship, this is what you need to do. And a lot of them actually reach out to me on Facebook. They would send me a message on Facebook, or they would ask, their coach, hey, coach, do you have any contact for Joel? You want to reach out to him and ask him a couple of questions. Some of them do, So with that being said, I'm here to help. I went through the system, and I want to see, the athletes that we have get the education, one, but two, get the experiences that I have experienced as an athlete. I want to see Grenada up there with Jamaica and Trinidad and all those countries, because, like I said, we have the talent. It's just getting the things in place to get these student athletes out there so that they get the experience and get, everything that they need to be successful. That's all it is.
Yeah, and just to capsule the point you're making there, as well as what the person referred to in terms of the adoption athlete program, using some of the former retired athletes residing in the diaspora. I know of a basketballer who played professional basketball and now resides in Grenada. And I am still asking the question, why hadn't he been? I mean, I can say his name. His name is Nigel Byam. He lives in Grenada now, former professional basketballer. And apart from him doing his own little academy, why he's not being used almost on a permanent basis to help develop? That is another issue that should always be debated. But it makes a point in terms of reaching out and using, some of the people who were there. But there is a comment here from Mike Batiste. Grenada needs to develop the club structure in order to cater for athletes who are outside of secondary school. If clubs are well equipped, informed, and supported, then athletes at TAMCC, which is the T.A. Marshall Community College, would be covered. TAMCC is in Tantine, and he has TAMCC in all caps, Tantine in all caps, And Mike, just to stick a pin there, on Saturday's program with Joseph Redspur and Ray Roberts, a major part of the program will be dealing with the club structure, because it's something that is very much lacking, not just in Grenada, but within the OECS. The whole issue of sports club, the club structures rather in sports. We have a lot of teams and not clubs, and that is lacking. But getting back to Mike Batiste's point about the whole club structure, as he says, those who outside of the secondary school, if there were proper club structure, then the athletes, and not just athletes, track and field, we're talking about sportsmen in general, would have been catered for at the level of the TMR to come to college.
Okay, well, in terms of that, right, I can say this. When I was at GBSS, I was in a club. I didn't just run for Tantine Bullets. Whenever we would have, whether it be national champs or relay meets or whatever it is, I didn't just run for Tantine Bullets. I ran for a club called Frontline. And within that club, we didn't just run in Grenada. I used to travel to Trinidad regularly, competing at meets like the Hampton Games and stuff in Trinidad and even in Tobago. So for me, I don't think the big issue is the club structure. I think what it is that is pushing the club, right? Because sometimes you have certain secondary schools who would be like, well, you're carrying for a club because you're running for a secondary school, and I experienced that. So I think what it is that certain meets, should be catered for clubs and not per se the secondary school. Because, like, for example, in St. David's, they have trailblazers. Even though a lot of those students are from St. David's Sec, right? They don't compete for St. David's Sec during a lot of those meets. They compete for trailblazers. So in the same way, I think it should be done. It can be done in that way, where instead of having meets that you allow schools to compete in, it should be for those clubs.
Well, and I think that's the point Mike is making in terms of pushing the club structure, in terms of the formation of more clubs. That would help. That would help in the process, because trailblazers might be one, well organized, whatever, and that might just be one. But what's about another club in probably the parish of St. David, which will probably add to the others? What's about strengthening those in St. Andrew, which is talented? St. Patrick outside of McDonald College as a school. What's about a strong club out of the St. Patrick? And we might find one or two in in St. George, but the others like St. Mark and St. John and others, having the clubs, very important.
Right, and I think we need to have more competitions within the island, and that will kind of help with the whole club structure, in my opinion, because we only have the regular meets. You could have smaller meets within the different parishes to kind of help push the club structure. We don't necessarily have to be in the stadium to have a meet. You can have a meet in Tantine. You can have one in Club of Peters Park. You could have different meets around the island. These little if you want to call it a mini meet or a club meet, whatever you want to call it, you can have those meets to kind of help push that whole format. And I think that will help a lot, because, like I said, we don't have enough of those meets on the island to help push that kind of a club structure.
Okay, folks, with just about less than 15 minutes remaining in the program, we had an extended version because we wanted to cover quite a lot, and then your questions were coming in. And in case you have more, we finish at 15 minutes after the hour. And as Joel was saying, and he may want to repeat again for those who may have joined us a bit late, the important aspect of knowing what to do, and because we looked at specifically at those who have interest in attending U.S. colleges, what they need to know in terms of accessing, well, first of all, the research, accessing the scholarships, and, making sure that they get the best as a student athlete, and in terms of parents for their kids, and the coaches and clubs as well. What they need to know, preparing, as you say, almost like a checklist, doing the research, networking, all these sort of things. Joel, are you in a position for, in case coaches and others in Grenada are interested in getting information and willing to assist?
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I'm always, willing to help where I can, especially for my country. If you ask anybody on our campus, I'm big on my country. I always speak about Grenada. So even my director, she would mention a lot of my accolades when I don't, because she knows who I am about my country, and she realized how people from Grenada, how we operate. Because, like I said, Kevin went to the same university that I'm at, and she saw the way he worked, his work ethic, in classes and basketball. So she knows how we operate. So she would always bring us up. So, like I said, where Grenada is concerned, I'm always willing to help. Once I have the time. Coaches could always reach out to me. Student athletes already have reached out to me in terms of wanting information on how to go about doing certain things. So I'm always open to help. All you gotta do is ask.
Yeah, and outside of the ego and thing you're talking about, as you say, you always willing to pass on information and provide. There's no restriction in terms of you providing assistance by way of information, though.
No, there's no restriction. I mean, any information that is needed, in terms of NCAA rules and that kind of a stuff, there's no restriction on that. Um, if you ask me a question and I don't have the answer for you at that moment, I will always reach out to our compliance director, and he's always willing to help me as well. So,
And as a former coach yourself, what it is they need to know, especially those in Grenada, the coaches and others in Grenada need to know in terms of, um, contacting other coaches. I know there are certain restrictions for coaches in terms of recruitment. What it is they need to know.
right. So, and that's a good reason why, like I said, they need to go to the NCAA publications and download those manuals, because you have different periods of the year where certain types of recruiting can be done. You have a dead period, you have a quiet period, and there's different rules for those periods, right? So there's certain
What,
periods.
what period are we in now?
So right now we're not in any period. It's open. So you could do in person recruiting, you could do on campus recruiting, you could do all of that. But in certain periods, like for example, like in a dead period, you could speak to the athlete, but you can't have them on campus. You know, that could be a quiet period. One of the two. You could speak to them, but you can't have them on campus. And there's somewhere you can't even speak to them at all. I think the dead period you can't speak to them at all, but a quiet period you can speak to them, but you can't have them on campus. So like I said, having those manuals would help a lot, and would help coaches understand the system up here a lot, which in turn would help those athletes, getting those scholarships.
Okay. We cannot wait on that's Narissa. We cannot wait until fifth year to start prepping our athletes for U.S. residency and meeting scholarship requirements. That is something I think that is, very important.
Yes, and I agree, and that's why when I go and I speak to the athletes in Grenada and GBSS, I don't ask the coaches to just bring me Form 4 or Form 5 athletes. I tell them to bring the entire team. Because from Form 1, even Form 2, you should already have that, in your mind that, hey, I know I'm this good of an athlete, and I think I would have a talent to get a scholarship. Let me start, putting that in my mind. Let me start thinking about, what I need to do to get on that level. And like I said, it's not only Division 1. And to be honest with you might find some Division 2 schools who will give you a scholarship, and you don't have to be the top athlete to get it. You could be running as a male, you could be running like 10-5, 10-6 and get a scholarship. A full scholarship like that, depending on what division you're at. So I would advise every student athlete, regardless of, where you are in terms of talent, I would still, put your best foot forward, and you never know, you might land yourself a scholarship.
Yeah. Well, it seems as if the comments you made a while ago really opened a can of worms, because here is Jacqueline Smith. So true, Joel. All they care about is those free trip. And Jacqueline Jacqueline knows, she has been in the trenches for a lot of years. For those who don't know Jacqueline Smith, she has been there a lot of years. Yeah? So she knows what she's speaking about. Mike Batiste came back to say, oh, Joel dropping some truth bombs. Ego issues killing Grenadian track and field. Some athletes get some serious fight down depending on who they are being coached by. Yeah, it seems as if there's quite a lot to digest there.
Look, I'll be honest with you. Mike has a great point. You have so many athletes, talented athletes, who never got the chance, never got the opportunity to get that exposure, which probably would have pushed them to be from being good to being great. And I'll give you a good example. Alvin Charles. you know, and I remember competing against Alvin. And I thought Alvin would have been one of those athletes who would have been one of our top sprinters, you know, short sprinters. And I thought Alvin would have been probably one of the athletes who would have, you know, when I left, he would have been one of those athletes who would have been on that same, you know, path, leaving with me because we graduated the same year. And never heard anything, you know. So, you know, Mike has a great point. Sometimes it depends on who your coach is, you know, that's when you're able to get that push, you know. And I think it's unfair to a lot of the athletes that we have, you know. And I'll be honest with you again, that's one of the reasons why I stopped competing for Grenada, you know, because um, I have been training up until 2013. I was training, you know. Most people don't know that. When I was at Lindenwood doing my master's, myself along with Trish Bartholomew, we were still training. You know, we still competed, but no one knew that because the people who should make it a business to know what national athletes that we have, if they're still training or not, never reached out to me. You know, the last time I spoke to anybody in charge was 2010 when I was in Puerto Rico competing there. You know, and even then, when I heard about certain programs that some of the athletes got, and I inquired, well, you know, well, how come I never heard about any of these programs? What I was told was that, oh, well, you know, we never had any contact information from you. And I was like, what? So you're telling me all these years I had the same email address. You can't tell me you can't find my mom to find my contact information. You can't tell me, you can't ask any of the other athletes for my contact information to let me know what's going on. But they just chose not to. So that's why, you know, 2013, after, you know, seeing that, you know, I'm training, I'm coaching, I'm still going to class, and what am I doing it for? I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna hang it up and I'm gonna focus on my career. And you have a lot of other athletes who went through the same issues that I went through. You know, where you still have the drive, you still have the passion to want to compete, but because you don't have that what word I want to, you don't have that help, for lack of a better term. You don't have that help. You just, it's like, what are you going to do? You just give up. And that's what happened to me. I don't want to, but, you know, you got to eat. And I couldn't. I couldn't.
I say, Mike Batiste and Jacqueline and others may be just saying, Joel, don't be too diplomatic. Don't be diplomatic. You know, say what you have to say. But you know, it's important because I'm seeing here that McFarlane is saying, Mike Batiste, I agree, we need more unity than fight on. In the end of the day, it's not about the coach, it's about developing athletes and giving me the opportunity to go out and show the world what Grenada have. Example, watch home. Well, you're saying about the guys, Grenada should have a couple guys to join. Referring to Braylon Taplin and Kirani for a relay. And it's important that you mention that because around that time, 2010, 2011, 2013 was the time when there was talk seriously about putting a relay team together for Grenada. Yep. And you're saying, Joel, that you were training, you were in competition, but no one was reaching out to Joel Phillip. There was no communication. And
none whatsoever.
You had to make a decision between either you continue waiting, hoping, and looking at your future.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like that whole 4x4 talk, I mean, we've been talking about that for years upon years. And as an athlete, that's something that I was looking forward to. Because seeing the talent that we have and knowing myself, know what I could do on a 4x4, I was looking forward to it. Because I was saying to myself, you know, yes, you could finally get a goal in the 4x4 for Grenada. Especially with a lot of people wouldn't have been looking on for us on that 4x4. And like I said, no one contacted me. No one did. And, you know, I understand why a lot of national athletes who are in Grenada why they stop, why they give up on it. Because it's hard to be working a 9 to 5, and for me, doing classes from 6 to 10 p.m. at night, and then have to get up early in the morning to train. For what? In that case, for me, it was for nothing. So I gave up, and I could understand why a lot of other athletes gave up, because you can't be, making all those sacrifices in vain. Life, there's more to life than that. And like I said, you have a lot of people have families to feed. You got to take care of yourself as well. So it was a hard choice to make, but if I had to do it again, I would make the same choice. I would give it up and follow my career.
Heartbreaking. As much as I can say, Joel. Thanks very much, Joel. It has been a pleasure. We have, we could probably go on talking,
Oh yeah.
for quite a while. Some of the questions still coming in. Any opportunities for folks who are not enrolled in school but still very talented, maybe in a club that's especially in Grenada? I assume, again, if, as you were saying, if they're club structures and things like that, so they probably might be able, well, Trailblazers is one that they probably can look at, for thing. There is a need to clean house down there. Some talented athletes are falling off the radar. Kyron Batiste is adding that. Joel, probably an opportunity for you to close. I don't know if you want to comment on Kyron Batiste's last comment there and close on that.
Oh man, maybe Karen is right. Maybe we need to clean house and get people in there who are eager and people who are optimistic and are hungry to put the work in, so that everyone or every athlete, every coach has an equal opportunity to display their talent and represent not just themselves but their families and their countries. Because what everyone is saying is right. We have loads of talent in Grenada who go under the radar, and it's not just because of themselves. Is that people are not giving them an opportunity to be successful. So maybe we do need to clear house and start the ball rolling again. And I would say this: we do have people who have the hunger. We do have people who have the experience to fill those roles, and just to leave on this, the GAA and all of those organizations, they be having their what do you call it again, when they vote for the who vice president and all of that kind of stuff. I never hear when they have those elections.
General meetings, they meet in annual general
I never hear when those occur. And I'm sure there are other former athletes who would probably want to be in a role like that, but we never hear when those general meetings or those elections are being held. As far as I know, it's the same people who have been elected for donkey years, and it's the same thing we've been dealing with over and over, where athletes are just being looked over. So maybe we do need to clean house and get some fresh blood in there, people who are eager and are hungry to see Grenada be where we should have been years ago, and get the ball rolling that way.
Folks, I'm here because it's nothing that I had discussed with Joel. Joel just had something probably on his mind, and I think it was through Mike Batiste and others would have prompted him to just say it as it is. And we can just go on just talking and talking, but it seemed as if Joel really had something to say, and he had that opportunity to say it.
Well, and before we leave, I'll make this last point. I think as a people in Grenada, we need to make it our business to know what's going on within our different ministries. In this case, our Ministry of Sports and our Olympic Association, our Athletic Association. As a people, we need to make it our business to know what's going on, because that's where tax dollars is going. It's going to help all of these organizations, and we're not seeing nothing for it. Sometimes you might hear, well, okay, well, Karine do this or Taplin do that, but what happened to the other athletes? You hear nothing about them. you know. So I think, like I said, as a people, we need to be more proactive as to what's going on, you know. What athletes do we have out there presently? You know, who's out there that represent the country? Be it track and field, basketballs, football. It doesn't matter what the sport is. We need to make it our business to know what's going on with our athletes, and you know, what could we do to make sure that, you know, we don't just have a Karani out there or a Tapin out there, that we have thousands of them out there who are getting the same exposure and same coverage as Karani and the others are getting.
On that point, Joel, and to wrap up, do you think that it's probably time that people like yourself, Hazelman Regis, Narissa Wells, and the host of others, former athletes, as well as other sportsmen and women, come together and probably form not a pressure group, but some sort of organization, association in the diaspora that can be used as a lobbying in terms of getting some of the changes and some of what you are advocating for in Grenada?
To be honest, that's something that could be done. That's something that I would be for. I'll be more than happy to be a part of a, you know, organization like that, because to be honest, I think it's needed. I think we need to challenge a lot of the decisions that are being made currently where sports is concerned in Grenada. You know, a lot of us out here, I mean, we know what it takes. So I'll be for a group like that, and I will support a group like that.
Okay, then thank you very much. What a nice way to end it. You will support a group like that. That's a very and a sober way to end it as well. Well, Joel Phillip, I want to thank you for being part of our program this evening. I appreciate you have been very candid. I said it is at the start. Hope you can be candid, as well as, and I thank you for being that much candid. And I think most of the folks would have enjoyed your presentation today. Folks, that's all for this week. Join us on Saturday when we have a special program on OECS Sports. We will be speaking with former sports coordinator in the OECS, Joseph Redsperer, and Ray Roberts from Grenada will also be on the program, where we'll be speaking about sports and the sports media in the OECS. And come next Thursday, it's Fitzgerald Naka Joseph, former national basketball coach and author of a special book. He will be speaking to us. We'll be talking about sports in the parish of St. John's. That should be a very interesting discussion. Come next Thursday, same time, 6:30. Once again, thank you very much, Joel, and thank you for all the folks who have been providing their comments. Just to read just a few, there's a need to clean house, but yeah, we heard that. And then Narissa ended, it's a blessing to have someone like Joel in this position. Grenadian coaches should be capitalizing and reaching out for the most current info and getting our student athletes the opportunity to compete internationally. We ended by saying they're all facts. Thank you very much, everyone. And I thank
Thanks
you
for having me.
Yes, you're always welcome. Thank you very much.
All right.